It's a decision that's causing quite a stir in the political world. Last month, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of rolling back restrictions on campaign donations, allowing corporations to spend millions of dollars to support or oppose candidates. Critics believe it will have a negative influence on the upcoming midterm elections and possibly statewide elections here in New Jersey. But proponents feel it secures their right of freedom of speech. Shannon Bream has more.
This is an extraordinarily triumphant day for the First Amendment.
And a big win for corporations and labor unions, hoping to impact not only the fall's midterm elections, but the entire future of campaigns as we now know them. The justices essentially gave corporations the same First Amendment rights individuals enjoy when it comes to speaking out in the political arena, lifting many of the decades-old restrictions on corporate spending and messaging. Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote, quote, "When government seeks to use its full power, including the criminal law, to command where a person may get his or her information or what distrusted source he or she may not hear, it uses censorship to control thought. This is unlawful. The First Amendment confirms the freedom to think for ourselves."
I don't know why the opponents are so freaked out about this. They don't seem to be bothered by the fact that media corporations have free speech. Why shouldn't a non-media corporation have free speech as well?
But the White House says the opinion is a, quote, green light to a new stampede of special interest money in our politics. And critics are warning that big business is about to take over elections from coast to coast. In dissenting, Justice John Paul Stevens said corporations should never be given unfettered political power. Quote, "Corporations help structure and facilitate the activities of human beings, to be sure, and their personhood often serves as a useful legal fiction. But they are not themselves members of we the people, by whom and for whom our Constitution was established." Senator Charles Schumer, who once chaired the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, called this ruling un-American.
The money spent and the airtime purchased by deep-pocketed interests will dwarf the voice of average Americans. I have not seen a decision that more undermines campaign finance, and it's probably one of the 3 or 4 decisions in the history of the Supreme Court that most undermines democracy. We will regret the day that this decision has been issued.
Joining me now for more, attorney Jim Ventantonio, who opposes the ruling, and political consultant George Ajjan, who supports it. As a result, the nation's wealthiest corporations can now spend unlimited amounts of money to help affect or defeat candidates for public office. Is this a good thing for the election process?
Well, I think so, and I think if there's one thing that will redeem that phony conservative known as George W. Bush in the eyes of history, it's definitely going to be the nomination of Robertson, Alito, to the Supreme Court, because they absolutely steered the court in the correct direction on this decision.
Is this a matter of free speech? Why should a corporation be prevented from spending money as they wish?
Oh, well, matter of free speech. We limit free speech in 1,000 different ways. We limit free speech of prisoners, of students. Even government employees have a limitation on free speech. In New Jersey, we don't let them have free speech near polls. This is about money. You know, Mark Hanna, a Republican kingmaker in the 19th century, said there are 2 things important about politics. The first is money, and then he said, I can't remember what the second one was.
Much of the criticism centers around companies, of course, now being allowed to influence elections for their own interests. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I hate to belabor the point, but it is really about free speech. Of course, even the dissenting justice noted that corporations play an active role in society. They employ a lot of people. It's an important contributor to the economy. They have interests that should be heard and voiced within the political system.
So what about the New Jersey voters who don't have a lot of money to spend on the elections, or who don't have a lot of money, millions, to really impact an election? What about them? What happens?
They'll be essentially voiceless. And we're looking now at corporations, you know, 2008. Federal lobbyists spent $5.1 billion and they still have about 13,000 lobbyists. And in 2009, just this last year, it was about $3.1 billion spent because of the healthcare debate to some extent. What we're looking at in that situation is that we're going to have more money going into this.
So, and how do you actually protect the interests of the voters if the priorities lie with the corporations who may have helped the officials to get elected?
Well, I mean, I think it relates to a bigger issue, which is less about money, as you say, but more about power. I mean, if we look at, for a functioning republic, the representatives need to be accountable to the citizens. When the United States was founded, the ratio was about 1 representative to every 30,000 people. We're going to elect in this year in November, 435 members of the House of Representatives to represent 300 million people and allocate almost $4 trillion. That means one person for every 700,000 people. There's no way that you can be accountable. One person can be accountable to 700,000 people. So that's where people's voice is not being heard. I mean, to argue about how much money we can donate to them, that's like saying, well, we're going to restrict how much money you can spend on the snack bar on the Titanic. You can pick out all you want. The ship's going down, and it's not going to be pretty.
Since this does impact federal elections, what can we expect in regard to New Jersey's midterm elections this fall?
Oh, I think you'll see a massive influx of more money than we normally would see. If you, this is a critical time frame at this point because there's always a hope, I think, on a national level that there may be a regaining of the House by the Republicans. So there'll be push on, you know, endangered Democrats, for example, in New Jersey.
That'd be nice.
And we're seeing the wealthy leave this state, so do you think that's going to impact it even more?
No, I think it'll impact it. I just think there's more money coming in. The money is going to be corporate money. It's not going to be personal contributions because, frankly, you can never contribute enough as an individual to be involved in the politics.
Well, that's another restriction that needs to be repealed. But as one of the justices supporting the decision said, the answer to too much speech advocating one opinion is not to restrict that speech, but to have more speech of another opinion. So there's no reason that people who have a different point of view shouldn't be able to contribute to get their point of view out there.
Don't disagree with having different points of view. The real issue is that if we go back to originalists, and at least 4 of the majority decision are fundamentalists when it comes to and strict instructionalists, they say, what do our founders say? Well, our founders in 1788 didn't even think about corporations. Corporations are creations that came on much later. And from Thomas Jefferson to Teddy Roosevelt, they spoke against the danger of corporations.
Then amend the Constitution and change the wording of the First Amendment.
We didn't have to amend the Constitution. We had the Tillman Act of 1907 that was supported by 2 additional Supreme Court rulings that just were turned over recently. As Justice Stevens said, the only thing that significantly changed since both the McCain, Feingold, and the other 2 cases is the complexion of the court.
You think we're going to see a lot more foreign money coming in?
Well, you know, that's a good question. You can see it. It may not be directly because there were some prohibitions, but presupposing, say, the Chinese want to buy ExxonMobil, then you'd see the money indirectly come in.
I think there's a lot more hysterics than probably need be. We should be focused more on holding our representatives accountable and not worried about where they're getting their money from.
It ought to
doesn't
be
matter how much
interesting.
money they have. If we hold them accountable, it won't really matter.
Okay, we shall see. If you have ideas about topics you'd like to see discussed, please log on to my9tv.com and click on Public Affairs. We want to hear from you. That's all for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. For My 9, I'm Brenda Blackman, and we'll see you next week on New Jersey Now. Thank you, gentlemen.